This is Submerged, a brand new 1.20 questing mod pack in which we start, as the name would suggest, fully submerged underwater in this light blue capsule with nothing but a light blue tree at the center and a trapdoor, which does allow us to enter the ocean. However, there are more than one reasons why we don't want to do that right away. The very first reason is that I did just see a shark a moment ago swim past the glass here. I'm also fairly certain that there are even more dangerous mobs out there. The second reason is that I believe we almost physically can't. If we try and enter the water here, we immediately get the poison effect, and so if we were to stay in there for any extended period of time, we would just die, which of course is not ideal. However, we do of course have a quest book available to us. The very first thing I'm going to do here is go to Options, Controls, Keybinds, and change the keybind for the Open Quest option here, because right now it's bound to nothing. I would like it bound to my grave key, and the grave key by default is bound to FTB Ultimine. I'm going to change that to a button on my mouse. And then finally, there's also luggage in here. By default, if you press the grave key, you get that whistling sound, which I don't want to hear every single time I use my FTB Ultimine. And so instead, I'm going to go ahead and just go ahead and unbind that. You can press escape to get rid of that. But now that that is taken care of, we can, of course, begin by taking down our tree here. And of course, if you hold down the FTB Ultimine key that you just set in the key bindings, you can go ahead and break the whole tree at once. And of course, we do have fast leaf decay installed. And so all of the leaves are going to come down right away, giving us saplings, sticks, and logs. Now, we don't have the mod that lets us shift or run to make these trees grow faster. In fact, if we check the quest book here under the Cold Ocean quest line, this is the first quest line that we will get to in just a second, one of the first big milestones that we're going to work towards is the sapling grower. This right here allows us to instantaneously grow saplings into trees and is going to make it so much easier for us to get wood in the future, but we are getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. To start with, there is an information quest line. It says, "Welcome to Submerged. Thank you for downloading and welcome to Submerged." We can tick the box and we get a B-book as a reward. Follow the quests, they will guide you. Some quest lines may unlock as you progress through the quests. Warp pipes can be purchased with B-books in the catalog and will allow you to move around your base a lot easier. I can't say I've played with warp pipes. I'm very interested to see what happens there. C-books can be used to purchase items in the catalog. The catalog, for those who don't know, is a block that you can make and then place down. This guy right here. Once you have it, you can use it to spend your B-books and buy other items. The world is full of different ocean biomes. There are damaging waters, so we will go ahead and get damaged if we don't have a diving suit, which we've seen already. And then finally, toxic air. The air above the water is toxic, unless you have the toxic air curio. And I assume that's to kind of prevent us from just immediately going up to the surface and building an above ground base like we would in any other mod pack or in any other Skyblock, and to kind of force us to build out an underwater base in this submerged mod pack. And so now that that is taken care of, we can begin in the Cold Ocean questline, which does thankfully give us 10 mystical fertilizer right off the bat here, which is going to allow us to instantaneously grow 10 more trees. And hopefully that's going to be enough trees for us to get down to the sapling grower, at which point we shouldn't have to worry about getting more trees going forward. Of course, we do have a fairly standard start here. I believe we're going to make some planks, and we're going to go ahead and make a light blue colored wooden plank crafting table. A very specific name there for the crafting table. And I guess we'll wank that down over in the corner for now to make sure that it doesn't interfere with the spacing of the tree. And it looks like the very first thing that we're going to work towards getting is this wooden strainer. These wooden strainers here are going to allow us to generate resources such as driftwood. And this driftwood is going to allow us to make things like wooden buckets, wooden shears, wooden hoppers, and kind of most importantly for the progression here, the cutting board. However, to get the actual strainer itself, we need a wood catcher. I'm going to press A. That's going to bookmark the recipe so that now we can just click here and go back to it without having to search for it over and over again. And we also need a wooden mesh. Thankfully, both of those are pretty straightforward. The wooden mesh is just 8 sticks crafted in a circle, like so. And then the wood catcher is just 7 logs crafted in a U-shape, like that. The strainer itself also doesn't seem too difficult. It requires 2 meshes of any kind with 4 sticks and 3 logs. So we are going to have to get at least 1 more stick here to allow us to make 1 more mesh. And in fact, I'm fairly certain that we're also going to need to get an extra mesh to put into the strainer once we have it down as well. And so I think we might as well go ahead and do something like this. I'm kind of holding off on making an axe, even though it would allow us to chop down the trees faster. It is going to eat into our wood, and given that we only have a limited amount of it, I don't want to use all of our wood making things that we don't necessarily need, just on the off chance that we then end up not having any wood at all and can't progress with the quest line, which I don't think is going to be the case, but just in case it is the case, I'm going to hold off for now on the X. And so boom, there's our wooden strainer, and as the quest says here, it says the net part, which is kind of the top half of the multi-block structure, must be placed in water to collect resources. A strainer tank can be used on top instead. And so the idea here, if we hover over the strainer and press U, it can show us all of the uses. And if we go to this tab, we can see that if we place it in water with, for example, a bait box, it will get us fish. If we place it in with the wood collector that we just made, it will generate driftwood. Now, as the questbook mentions, we do need to place it in water. You can put these down on the ground with the water tank above it, and then if you can get water into that tank, you can then actually make it work. And it looks like, surprisingly, by default, Ben has given us a tank full of water, which is very nice. And so what we should be able to do here is place in our wood catcher. And then if we go ahead and get another one of these wooden meshes with, again, 8 sticks in a circle, like so, we should then be able to throw that in as well. And now, passively, but slowly, we should begin to get some of the driftwood. And if I'm not mistaken, I think the driftwood is a 100% chance. It is. You'll see here that no matter what tier of mesh we use, it is a 100% chance that after 200 ticks, which is 10 seconds, we will get 1 driftwood. Nice. And looking forward here, we can get a bunch more stuff now that we have access to that driftwood. I do think one of the things that might not be a bad idea for us here is potentially just getting a second strainer right off the bat so that we can increase the production rate of a lot of the stuff that we can get through strainers. For that, we are going to basically have to make the exact same stuff that we just made all over again. So we get 2 more of the wooden meshes, and then from there, we're just missing 4 sticks. That is fine. Boom. And of course, boom, and boom. Good stuff. This one, I think what we can do, it's a little bit tricky because I don't think that the strainer tank is something we can make just yet because we don't have access to glass. But what we might be able to do if we're fast about it is go down here, place down a block, place down the strainer, and then if we quickly get back up into our room, we can then get rid of the light blue plank that we placed down, and now we do have another strainer that does have water above it that we can use to actually generate resources. So if we wanted to, we could go ahead and put another wooden mesh with another wooden catcher in there. However, I think instead, what is going to make more sense for us here is to make another wooden mesh, which is required for all of the strainers. But then if we look at some of the future quest lines here, we can in fact get the bait box that we saw a second ago to start getting fish. That fish is not only useful for food, but we're also going to use that fish on our cutting board to get bone meal. And so let's see then about using some of the driftwood to make some wooden shears. We can, of course, then go ahead and use those shears, again, if we hold down our Alt key to break all of these leaves and very quickly get a stack of light blue leaves from that. And from there, we can use those leaves to make worms. The way that we do that is by placing just a single leaf into the wooden strainer like this, and it should use up the leaf, but it should, again, I believe, be a guaranteed worm. And so this is kind of the benefit of having more than one strainer because we can continue to get the driftwood over here, which is just going to go basically forever until this wooden catcher runs out of durability, although it does look like it has a surprisingly high durability. And then down here, we can continue to get these worms, which it looks like can be used to craft the bait box. Again, more sticks, more logs, and the bait box is fairly straightforward. Nice. This is also going to go down into the strainer right about here. Again, I think the bait box, much like the wood catcher, is an item that has a fairly high durability, and so we should just be able to leave this running, and it should begin to passively generate all of these different fishes that we have from Minecraft and also from Aquaculture 2 as well. There's quite a few different ones in here. We've got a pollock, blackfish, we've got a red shroomer. There's all kinds of fish. You'll see 12 pages worth of different items and fish that we can get from this bait box. Nice. And I believe that is going to complete a quest for us. And real quick, let me go through and collect some of these rewards here. So some of these quests are single reward quests, and if I click the collect all rewards in the top right, it will go ahead and give me all of those. However, a few of these are quests where you have to pick the reward that you want. For example, right here, this lets me pick a different color of sapling. I am going to go with this pink colored sapling, because I think it's going to contrast very harshly with the light blue that we currently have. Right here, we get to pick a color of dirt, and just to keep things in theme, we'll go for a pink piece of dirt. Then for the crafting table here, we get to pick a egg, Scrooge McDuck, Dorking Duck, Ductor, Daffy Duck, Dewey, Louie, Huey, Donald, and Duckster. We've got to go for Ductor, right? Is that a duck that's a doctor? Of course it is. Look at that. He's got the little glasses and everything. You love to see it. And then over here we get another choice, actually. We could go for another Ductor. I'm going to go for Scrooge McDuck, who looks very fancy indeed. I don't know why, oh no, they both get a name. I was going to say, I don't know why Scrooge McDuck gets a name, but Ductor doesn't, but they're both named characters. This guy's got real wide-set eyes. Anyway, those guys are going to keep us company. Real quick, what you can do, in your inventory, there is this button right here, the little sound icon with the line through it. I'm going to go ahead and type in quack, and I'm just going to click muffle sound, and then turn the sound on that down to maybe like 20%, which means going forward, whenever we hear these guys, we're not going to have to hear it quite so loudly going forward, so it's not going to get quite so annoying quite so fast, which is fantastic. And so back over here, as I mentioned, we do now need to make the cutting board, which is yet more of the driftwood with a couple of sticks like this. Nice. We then also need to get a knife to use that cutting board, which, if I'm not mistaken, looks like this. It's 2 driftwood and 1 stick, like so. And if we do something like this, actually, I want to put that ideally right here. We can now, I believe, put down any of our fish onto here, right click with the wooden knife, and we get ourselves some raw fish fillets and some fish bones. So the fish bones here, we can actually craft into bone meal, which completes the quest. On top of that, we can also, of course, use the raw fish fillets for food, and I'm fairly certain that going forward, we should also be able to smelt those raw fish fillets into cooked fish fillets for slightly better food as well. And so real quick, I don't know how much bone meal we're going to need here, but I'm going to go ahead and use my knife. I do wonder if I put the knife here, I don't think that works, but I think if I put the fish here, that would work. Like that. It does. Unfortunately, we don't have that many fish, and all of our fish are different, so having it in the offhand doesn't really make it any faster. But that does get us a decent amount of food, which for now we'll eat as it is, just because we don't have access to a smeltery of any kind, and I don't know how far away cobblestone is. And I would also like to regenerate some health, just in case we do want to put down another strainer underwater as well, because that is still a possibility. We can put down quite a few under there and still get back in time before we die from poison, especially if we have enough health to do so. But back in here, there's a couple of quests we've kind of skipped over. The first is for the wooden bucket. This one is fairly straightforward, and in fact, this kind of negates the need to really go back in the water at all if we want to put down more strainers, because now what we should be able to do is take that bucket of water, and if we wanted to place down another strainer, we could put the water down above it. It just means we'd have to kind of block the water in, because of course without the tank that we have right here, the water would just flow everywhere, which is not ideal. Either way, the next quest down from that is to get some bone blocks, which we can get by crafting, of course, 9 bone meal, like so. And then from there, we're actually at the point where we can now get both a composter and the sapling grower. I think the sapling grower is definitely going to be the first item on my agenda. That is just 2 sticks and 1 block of bone. And now we can take any sapling, place it down, right-click with the sapling grower, and it just instantly grows into a fully fledged sapling, which is pretty OP. And from there, we can of course finally go ahead and invest in that axe that I mentioned earlier to make it just ever so slightly faster for us to tear down these trees going forward. And of course, we don't really have a pickaxe. I guess we can also make one of those as well. But I was going to say, of course, we can also go ahead and get down our pink dirt as well to allow us to grow more than 1 tree at once. If we do something like this, we can throw down our color coordinated saplings, boom, 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 and boom, and then we can go ahead and chop all those down. It's a little inefficient to do different colored logs just because of the fact that they don't all get chopped down at the same time with Ultimine, and so it does make sense to just do 2 blue or 2 pink. But either way, back over here, what other quests do we have? There is one quest for a wooden hopper. There's also a quest for a chest as well. There is, it's over here, perfect. And I do like the fact that we get a thematic light blue colored wooden chest as well. That's actually pretty nifty. I do wonder, can I make a double light blue colored chest? I would assume there's no reason why this wouldn't work. It totally does. Nice. And so let's make a third one here. The third one, of course, going to be used for our wooden hopper, which looks something like this, just using the driftwood instead of regular wood. And I think if we wanted to now as well, we could potentially look at auto hoppering out of like this wooden strainer into a chest. Not that I think it's strictly necessary given just how much space there is inside the strainer here. But you'll notice we are actually running out of wooden meshes. One thing that we might be able to do actually, I think we might be able to make a bunch of wooden meshes and then put those into a wooden hopper if I do this and this. And then I guess also potentially if I take one of these away, we could move a chest on top of that wooden hopper. I think that might work in terms of continuing to fill this up with new wooden meshes whenever the one in here breaks, which is going to continue to allow us to get more driftwood. I am really not a fan of the fact that the wooden mesh here is almost the exact same color as the chest behind it. That makes it really hard to see what we have there. But either way, we'll claim this. And the very last quest, actually the second to last quest, is the composter down here. We do have a quest to make an aquatic torch. The aquatic torch is a glow ink sac, which is a 10% chance above a stick. Do we have any glow ink sacs? We do not, and that's because our bait box has been broken. Again, we should be able to make some more bait boxes here. If we go ahead and get just a few more sticks, we should be able to get another one of these. Again, we could do a similar thing here to where we use the hopper to try and funnel more of these bait boxes in. I think that would work. While we wait for those to come in though, let's see if we can't make the composter, which I assume is going to allow us to make bone meal from saplings, which is also just going to make bone meal easier going forward. It means we don't have to rely on fish for all of our bone meal. For that though, we just need to get some more slabs and boom, 7 slabs and 1 bone block gets us the composter. We'll whack that down in the corner. And then while we wait on that glow sack, there are 2 kind of final quests over here. We have one for a crook and one for a crafting table. The crafting table we already have, so if I pick this up, I'm pretty sure that will complete the quest in question. Oh, it won't. We have to craft a vanilla crafting table. I see. So it wants me to do this. It does. Interesting. I'm not quite sure if there's a reason behind that. I guess outside of just wanting a vanilla crafting table, although the GUI looks exactly the same, so I'm not quite sure of the benefit there. A crook, though, is super useful. The crook increases the drops that you get when breaking leaves. And so if we use our crook here to break these leaves, we're going to get more saplings and more apples than we would have done otherwise if we hadn't have used the crook, which can be quite useful, especially if we get light on saplings. Did we get a single glow sack? It came in just at the exact second that we walked over to the strainer, which is perfect. And I believe that that is the first chapter of the quest book completed. Nice. And also, I'm fairly certain that these can be placed down underwater. So can I, for example, just place that down like that? I can. I don't know if there's much point in placing it down right there. I don't know if that's particularly useful for us, but it does work. And it is going to help us to illuminate up the water around us if we need to do that going forward. So real quick, let me go ahead and dump some of the stuff that we have here into this chest. Real quick, there are also a few small things that I do want to tweak. Up at the top, you'll see we have the box that tells us what item we're looking at. That is from the One Probe mod here. If you take this README that you start with and you shift right click it, you can configure how this looks. I'm going to move mine to the top left and I'm going to set it to full transparent style. I think that just looks a little bit better. It's a little bit more minimal and kind of out of the way. And then the second thing that I'm going to do, just a small quality of life thing, I'm going to press J. I'm going to go to Options, Minimap Preset 1. I'm going to untick Enable Minimap. That's going to get rid of the minimap in the top right, just because I don't really think it's necessary when we have such a small base, and currently we're not really looking to expand that out. You can still press J and it will still show you the minimap that you could see before. I just don't really think it needs to be massive and in the top right-hand corner of my screen at all times. And so now that those are taken care of, let's see what is in store for us in the second quest in this quest line. The first one here wants us to make regular bones, which we can do by chopping up a standard bone block. Did this work? It did. So the hopper did put the new wooden mesh into here, so we are going to continue to get driftwood. That is good. Somebody in the Twitch chat just asked if that was working. I can confirm indeed that it was. Over here, we do have more fish bones. Not quite enough to make another block. However, of course, we do have a ton of fish available down here now, so I will take a few of those and give them a quick chop. Boom, and boom. That gets us more than enough to make our next block of bone, and from there we can take that and chop it with the knife again to get some actual bones, which now are going to unlock quite a few things for us. The first thing I notice is the bone mesh here. The bone mesh is a higher tier mesh, for one, it's a tier 2 mesh, and so some things like I think the glow sacks are more likely with a tier 2 mesh. You'll see right now it's a 10% chance with a tier 1 mesh, it goes up to a 12% chance with a tier 2 mesh. But really the big benefit of upgrading to the bone mesh is just that it has more durability, and so it will last longer than the wooden mesh. The wooden mesh has 80 uses, the bone mesh almost quadruples that, up to 221 uses. The only downside here is that the bone mesh is much more expensive to make, and having to keep making these, going through the stages of making them, is a bit more hassle than just bulk making these wooden meshes and using a hopper. So I will make the bone mesh here to complete the quest, but I don't know if we're going to bother going around and upgrading all of our strainers going forward to make sure we're using bone meshes, just because I don't really think it's going to be worth it in the long run. Another thing that we get access to is a really nifty part of this pack, because I haven't really mentioned it, but we have these basic room key blocks on all 4 sides of the base. And if I'm not mistaken, and there's some of the hostile fissures that we saw earlier. But if I'm not mistaken, the way this works, you'll see in the top left, it's from the opolis mod. But the way it works is that we can get these keys here, these different keys, and use them to automatically generate new rooms of our base. And depending on which key you use is going to determine what you actually generate. You'll see here, there's corridor 1, corridor 2, and corridor 3. So depending on which one you use here, I believe it's going to create a short, medium, or long corridor. And then we also have room 1, room 2, and room 3, or short room, normal room, tall room. And that's going to create different sized rooms for us to expand the base. You'll see there's also a keyhole up at the top there as well, so we could create a corridor going up, or we could even create a new room directly above us without having to do any actual building and without having to go out into the ocean. And I'm fairly certain that it will also get rid of the water for us so that there's not water inside of the room when we make it. So to get down here, we need a bone hammer. This is yet more bone. I'll bookmark that. We also need to get the skeleton key, which seems pretty straightforward. Most of what's here is just a lot more bones and bone blocks. I am assuming that we can do this to get bone meal. We can. I don't know if it's worth doing. We can definitely go faster with that, I'm fairly certain. There's no real speed cap to how fast you can put stuff into the composter, but it's just not particularly fast. We can also throw our mallard duck egg, which I assume we're going to get periodically from these 2 jabronis, but I think it's just always going to be faster for us to use our fish here to get more bones using the knife. And so real quick, I'm just going to go ahead and continue to do more of what we've been doing up until now, getting more of these fish bones, crafting them into bone meal, crafting those into blocks, and then occasionally crafting those into bones until we have enough to make the skeleton key and the bone hammer. And quite a bit of fish chopping later, I think we now have everything that we need to make the bone hammer and to make the skeleton key. In fact, we can make more than 1 skeleton key, which is actually going to be quite useful here, because the next quest is to make key fragments. The key fragments are made using the cutting board again. This time, though, we take our skeleton key, place it down, we take our bone hammer, right click, and that gets us these key fragments. And these key fragments can be used in different combinations to make the corridor key, the key block remover, and the short room key. If I'm not mistaken, the key block remover here removes the key block. So if you use that on the key block, it will just turn into a normal light blue colored stone block and will no longer be usable to make a new room, which I guess can sometimes be useful. For us, I'm gonna go ahead, I think, and make a corridor key first. The corridor key is just 3 fragments like this. And we could right-click this to get a corridor. This will override the blocks in the area. That is fine. I think if you've built anything behind it, it will delete it, which is not ideal. We can upgrade it. These are optional quests, but to upgrade to tier 2 is just 2 fragments. It's not strictly necessary. It's just going to make a longer corridor, I think. And then the same is kind of true for the third key as well here. That's just 2 more fragments, which again, we can get if we do this and this. We could upgrade this to tier 3, which is going to give us the longest corridor possible. And so now if we do this, we get a nice long corridor with 3 more of these room keys, which is actually quite useful. And so back over here, let's see if we can also now make the short room key. I don't know if what we have currently is a short room, a medium room, or a long room. My gut would tell me that a short room, whoops, let's not die here, Isaac. That would be very bad. I should definitely close that when I'm not using it. My gut would tell me that this is either a short room or a medium room. I doubt it's tall, but the fact that we only have 1 level of keys makes me think that this is probably a short room. And so I might make another short room, although chat is telling me that we have a medium room. And so what I think I might do then is make another medium room. That does require 4 more fragments. Like this. Of course, we could, if we wanted to, very easily, I think, make another skeleton key and therefore get even more fragments here to make a tall room. But I don't know if a tall room is going to be strictly necessary because this room's already quite tall. It's already tall enough to grow trees. And so I think it's probably better to use our fragments to make more rooms and corridors rather than making super tall rooms and corridors. But just like before, over here, we should now be able to use our normal room key here, which looks suspiciously, by the way, like the skeleton key. Those are very similar graphics, but if we go ahead and right-click here, it's going to build another one of the exact same room. Look at that. Nice. And so we should be able to continue doing that, of course, going forward to build a bunch of new rooms of different sizes, of different shapes, going forward. And I really like that they kind of already come with the luminous glass. They already have the light blue colored stone. It just looks real nice, I think. I'm not a huge fan of the fact that it's slightly different here. We've got these light blue colored stone bricks, and then we don't have them on the corner, although I'm fairly certain if I wanted to at some point, we could look at changing that. For now, though, we do have a brand new room and even more space for our ducks to wander around in, and we can, of course, go ahead and claim some of these key fragments back from this quest line, and I believe we can now move down to start working towards something like the furnace here, which is going to finally give us a slightly better source of food, because right now we are not doing particularly well when it comes to food. So let's take a look at the stone pebble. This is made by placing leaves into the strainer. I do wonder, it does require a tier 2 mesh. So you'll see here that the wooden mesh is no longer listed and the only chances are with a tier 2 mesh. So this is one of those situations where we do in fact need to get the bone mesh. We also need to get some of the leaves that we made earlier. Although now that I mentioned that, I'm fairly certain we just used all of the leaves, making like 2 pieces of bone meal, which in hindsight probably wasn't worth it, but thankfully they are fairly easy to get. And so back down here, we can go ahead and throw in our bone mesh along with our leaves, and that should start to slowly but surely generate stone pebbles for us. It is only a 50-50 chance, so we're not guaranteed to get them. We are still also guaranteed, I should say, to get the worms as well. So you do get both of these at the same time. You'll see that we got stone pebbles there along with worms. If we get 2 more, which we did, I believe we can now craft up 1 piece of cobblestone. We totally can. Unfortunately, we used that stone two-faced and it didn't count for the quest. Thankfully, it's a 50-50 chance, and so this time we should get some good stuff. And boom, there's both of those quests complete. Thankfully, we do get more stone pebbles and more cobblestone as a reward. And I'm kind of thinking it is almost certainly going to be in our best interest to make like a bunch more strainers, just so we can start getting stuff like that a lot faster. I don't know if we're going to be able to get cobblestone any other way in the near future. The dispenser here, it says, can help automate the cutting board. The cutting board drop items to the opposite side of the hole in the cutting board. Oh, I see. So when it drops, it kind of shoots it out this side, I think. If you want to put a hopper down or something, I think that could work. And then you can use a redstone clock on the dispenser, presumably with a knife as well to automate that. Although we do need to get 8 cobblestone if we're going to make the furnace, which is going to allow us to cook the fillets. And by the looks of it, it's also going to allow us to make some charcoal here, which is needed to make a charcoal filter to make some paper, which is how we're going to progress. And so what I think I will do then real quick is make a couple more strainers, and we'll place those strainers down, I think, in the new room over here. And I might even move the pre-existing strainer that we have. I don't know if I can get I think I can get this tank back. I think if I break it, it's gonna be fine. We're just not gonna get the water, but now that we have access to this water bucket, that shouldn't be a problem. We can refill it fairly easily. So I might move this strainer as well as some new strainers over into the new room. And not too long later, we now have 5 more wooden strainers, not including the one over in the corner. I've not moved that one yet, but I've placed these all down, and then I've put some pink slabs around the front here so that now we should be able to go ahead and place water on top like that without the water flowing out. And of course, as soon as we get a second water source block and place it down 2 blocks away, right about here, we should now have effectively an unlimited source of water, and now all of these should be able to start producing stuff for us. Of course, if we're wanting to produce more of these stone pebbles, we're going to need to get bone meshes specifically, and so to keep things chugging along here, I guess what we should probably do is, first of all, get yet another lot of saplings. If you could move out of the way here so the tree doesn't suffocate you as soon as it grows. Fantastic. We can chop all these down, which might destroy our axe. Not quite. That's pretty good. But let's go ahead and make another couple of bait boxes here. And we'll throw that down over here just to get more fish so that we can make more bones and more bone meal if we need it. Because, of course, ideally, if we're going to get a bunch of pebbles out of these new strainers, they do all need to have bone meshes, which means we need to make 5 of the bone meshes in total. For that, we're going to need to get 20 bones, which is going to be quite a few of these bone blocks here, 7 in total. Right now, we've only got what it takes to make 4 of these, which I guess is a start and is going to allow us to make at least a couple of these bone meshes here, which is good because it does mean that we can throw them, of course, over into 3 of our 5 pre-existing strainers. And then, of course, we can get ourselves even more leaves to get those cooking with even more stone pebbles. Although, real quick, before we continue, our hunger is very low. Do we have enough pebbles here to make a furnace? We totally do. Fantastic. Let's drop that down. Let's drop the cobblestone in. That's a new little interface there for the furnace. Interesting. And while that's doing its thing, let's go ahead and get ourselves 2 more trees that we are going to go ahead and shear. I guess if it's leaves we're after, we might as well shear the leaves before we grow the second sapling, just to maximize the amount of leaves that we get. And then, of course, the idea here is that we're going to distribute these amongst the 5 different strainers that we have. Click and drag, by the way, over a given number of slots. So if you want to distribute, click and drag, and it will just divide them and give you the excess if it doesn't divide nicely, which is useful to know every now and again. And so now if we take those leaves and we drop them in here, here, and here, I'm also going to do here and here, even though that's not going to do anything just yet. Those are going to start to produce for us yet more worms, but also more stone pebbles that we can use for more cobblestone going forward. And so let me tear this down here, and then real quick, let me see if I can't get 2 more of those bone meshes by chopping down yet more of our fish, just to get all of those online, and then we'll start looking at the drying table and the paper. Also, real quick, let's go ahead, make a bunch of fuel, and let's get all of this raw fish cooking. And again, not too long later, we have 2 more of these bone meshes, as well as yet more leaves, which I will go ahead and distribute amongst 5 stacks. Again, we also now have a ton of fish, and some of it is even cooked as well, which is a substantial upgrade. It's still not the best source of food in the world, but it is an upgrade over what we had previously. And so let's go ahead and divvy these up amongst all of our strainers to hopefully very quickly get ourselves a bunch of pebbles, and I guess also a bunch of worms as well. We should eat at least one of these worms, because you'll see that it says not yet eaten, what does it taste like? And that essentially means that we have, I think it's the Spice of Life mod installed, which, as you'll see here, now that we've eaten it, assists in adding hearts. Basically, the more wide the variety of food that you eat, the higher your hearts get. Essentially, once you eat a certain number of different foods, you'll get an extra heart, and then if you eat more foods, again, you'll get another heart. And as the pack progresses, the more different stuff that we eat, the more bonus hearts we'll get going forward. And so it is worth eating everything at least once. Like this pink apple here we've not eaten yet. We should go ahead and eat that. We'll get a little particle effect. And look at that. It's a Spice of Life Carrot Edition. What a unique flavor. You've gained 2 hearts. And so you'll see now that we have 12 hearts as opposed to 1. Nice. And so now let's take a look down here and see if we can't get this paper To do that, we first need a drying table. The drying table seems pretty straightforward. It requires specifically a leafy mesh, which requires leafy string. The leafy string is just leaves. We do have leaves, but I do want to leave the ones in the strainers where they are for the time being, and so I will instead go ahead and get another set of shears. Of course, we do still have driftwood coming in, and so we've got a ton of the stuff at this point. We don't really have to be too stingy on it, and we'll go ahead and quickly chop that down. We'll do the exact same thing, of course, with this guy, just to maximize our leaves. Boom, and boom. And then over here, if we do this, we can make some leafy string. I believe we might be able to make wool from that. We can. That could be particularly useful in terms of making a bed at some point, if that becomes something that we need to do. For now, though, we can make a mesh, and that mesh should be usable to make a drying table. It is, we just need a single piece of cobblestone, and of course we can make a bunch of cobblestone actually using the pebbles that we have. Nice. And so the drying table here is going to, as the name suggests, allow us to dry stuff. There is also a counterpart to the drying table known as the soaking table. The drying table can be waterlogged to create the soaking table. Use a bucket of water on it to create a soaking table. So initially, we need to craft just 4 driftwood into a log sheet. Once we have the log sheet, we then need to soak that log to get soaking paper. So to do that, we're going to want to throw down, again, a couple of slabs, ideally, I think around here, just to make sure the waterlog doesn't spread, like the water we put down doesn't go everywhere. But if we do this, that's going to waterlog the drying table into a soaking table. You'll see the name has changed. And now if we put this in, it should slowly but surely convert that into soaked paper over the course of 10 seconds. At which point, we can then use that soaked paper to make regular paper in a drying table. Interesting. And it looks like we're then going to use that to make a charcoal filter. And I'm assuming, judging by the next quest line here, that that charcoal filter is going to be used in the making of our diving gear. It is. So we're going to make a full set: diving helmet, diving suit, diving leggings, and diving flippers. And all of these are made from marine fabric, which is leafy string with a charcoal filter. Presumably the idea there being that the charcoal filter is going to allow us to filtrate our breathing and allow us to breathe underwater. And so we can, of course, just pick the water up, turning this back into a drying table. And at that point, I think we're basically good to go. That's going to get us our first piece of paper. It does indeed. Over here, I think we needed charcoal. So let's throw some logs in there to get that charcoal to make the charcoal filter. We do need 4 pieces of paper, though, to make that happen. And of course, right here, we only have 2. However, as I mentioned a second ago, we've got a ton of driftwood. And so if we just make a bunch of these log sheets, we can throw them in like so. That's going to go ahead and make a ton of the soaked paper, which we can then turn into regular paper and use to make the charcoal filters. Whilst we wait for all of that to come in, and of course we can complete the quest for charcoal, and we can also complete the quest for mini charcoal. Fantastic. But we can also look at potentially getting the catalog as well here. The catalog is 1 B-Book with 8 stone. I think at this point in time, we probably do have enough stone pebbles to where it's not going to be too much of an issue for us to make that happen. And I'm also going to go ahead and, I was going to say make a new furnace, but actually I think 4 charcoal should be enough for now. So let's go ahead and just throw 8 cobblestone in there to make 8 stone for that catalog. That's going to allow us to start spending our B-Books, hopefully, on some useful items. Over the top here, we do have a quest to make a sharp bone, which is a regular bone, again, cut with the knife like this. That gets us a sharp bone, and then presumably we need 2 of these, yes, to make a remnants saber. So we'll do that one more time. Let's do this, and then from there, is that everything we need to make the saber? It is. Look at that. So now we've got at least some kind of weaponry. How useful that's going to be against the mobs in the water is yet to be seen. It does have an adaptation that it deals 100% more damage while in water. So right now it's just a 5 attack damage sword, but as soon as we go into water, it is going to become a 10 attack damage sword, which I assume is going to be quite useful for us. We'll also look, I guess, at making the dispenser here as well whilst we wait. If I do this, and we place it down right about here, again, ideally not like that. Ideally, I want to place it down kind of up against the pink slab. So something like that. I think from there we can put the wooden knife in here, and by default it's not going to do anything because I think it does require that redstone clock to work. So if I just put a fish down right about here, that's not going to do anything. However, there is of course a quest for the redstone clock, which is just 4 buttons easy enough, along with one cobblestone actually, which is even easier because we've got so much cobblestone coming in at this point. We'll take this, and if I put this up here, that is going to cook the fish. Nice. As it mentioned, it does kind of shoot it out this way, so if we really wanted to make this more automated, we'd probably want to put a hopper down on this side, just like in the ground, and that way any item that got flung out would go into the hopper and then down. I also think you could probably hopper onto the cutting board as well. In fact, you know what? Let's give it a try because we're still waiting on, actually, never mind. We're not waiting on this. Let's do one of these and one of these. That gets us the catalog. We'll throw that down, let's say over here. And I believe now if we put our B-Bucks in, it's going to show us all of the different things that we can buy with our B-Bucks. And there are actually quite a few different things. I'm very interested to try out the warp pipes. I don't know how expensive those are going to be. Not very expensive is the answer. Pipe wrench. I wonder if that's also for the warp pipes or if that's for something else. We've got a mysterious cube from Applied Energistics 2. We've also got clear warp pipes. We've got quite a few different colored warp pipes actually. And colored cave roof. Right click to ascend to the colored cave's roof. Only in the colored caves. Okay, that's not particularly useful for us just yet. We'll come back to that real quick. What I'm going to do, I'm going to tear this down. I'm going to make a few more of the wooden hoppers, and we're going to see if we can't automate this chopping board in a better fashion. Okay, so I'm thinking here, if we put down a chest like this and a hopper like this, I believe that what we should be able to do is put down the cutting board. My first question is, which way does it face? And the answer is not the way that I thought it would. I think I want to put it down like this. My second question is, do I need this plank here? I don't think I do. The answer is that you 100% definitely do need that plank there, otherwise it will not work. That's fine. Let's do this. So now, my next question is, can I hopper onto the chopping board? So if I go get a fish and I put that in here, that does go onto the chopping board, which is perfect. Cool. And so from there, I wonder if I can put the dispenser just on top of this. Like if I do this, whoops, that's not at all what I wanted to do. I wanted to put the redstone clock down right about there, and then the dropper pointing down like that with the knife inside of it like this. My thought process then being that if we put the brown trout in, it gets chopped, and then over here, it gets fed into the chest. Nice. The hopper, of course, is a little bit slow at picking stuff up, but it looks like the items don't go that far, so I think it's fine. Real quick, I'm going to type in click. I'm going to type in clock. I'm going to type in dispenser. I think it's a dispenser sound that it's clicking. It is. Okay, let's turn those just right down again so we don't have to hear the clicking quite so regularly. But now we should be able to put another chest, let's say right about here, and that should kind of be the fish stuff automated. Now we can take essentially all of the fish out of here. Ideally not the ink sacs, not the tentacles, they also don't work, and not the glow sacs. But now if we put all of these in, the system is kind of going to just automatically take all of this stuff for us and run it through into this chest, which is kind of perfect. It means we don't have to manually keep using all this stuff. Of course, one thing that we do have to do is we do have to make sure that there is always a knife inside of that dispenser. Otherwise, it will not work. I don't think it matters if there's more than one knife. In fact, I think that's going to allow it to just run for longer. But this totally works. And it looks like, thankfully, the fish bones and the raw fish never get overshot so much as to not land in the hopper. And so even though it's going to take a little bit of time for them to funnel in, it totally works. And I guess if we really wanted to take this kind of to the next level, we could look at moving the strainer up here and making the strainer that produces fish kind of just automatically go above this wooden hopper. The only trouble then is that occasionally I think we'd end up with stuff like the ink sac on the cutting board. Not that it seems to matter, that does in fact work on the cutting board. The only thing that doesn't work on the cutting board is the glow ink sac. Everything else can be chopped, and so outside of those glow ink sacs, we could just put the strainer up there and this would be kind of fully automated. That's definitely something we could look at in the future. Ideally, we'd get to some point where we can actually do some filtering to make sure that the glow sacs never end up on there. For now, though, this totally works and is definitely a much easier way of us getting all of our bone meal, which is very nice indeed. Let's go ahead and claim all of our rewards here. In fact, look at that. I didn't even notice, but there is actually the very automation we just did is kind of right here. It's not quite the same. I don't know where this is. I think this is just pushing forward into like the player, so you pick it up automatically. But the premise there is kind of the same. Over here, let's pick up the water so that we can then go ahead and swap this back to a drying table. And as soon as we get 2 more paper, we should have everything we need to make our first carbon filter. And I think with that, we are going to have completed the second chapter of the quest book here. And 1, 2, 3, 4 mini charcoal, and boom. Nice. That gets us our charcoal filter. And if I'm not mistaken, I think that is this quest line almost complete. I think it should complete. No, so the key block remover is the quest that is non-negotiable, I guess. That's unfortunate. I didn't really want to have to spend the key fragment on making this, but that does complete the quest. There are more quests, but these quests are optional, and so don't need to be completed in order to complete the actual quest line itself. But we do get a fragment back, I guess, so it's not really a waste on that one. And so now we've kind of unlocked the diving section of the quest book that, as we saw before, wants us to make marine fabric. And by the looks of it, I guess we're going to take that marine fabric, make ourselves, of course, the full set of armor, and then go and actually manually acquire some of these other items here, the gravel, the dirt, the sand, the clay, and the kelp, and use those to progress forward. Because, again, presumably, as soon as we get ourselves a diving suit, we're going to be able to actually swim in the water without taking immediate poison damage. So, presumably, we need 24 marine fabric. That's how much you usually need of an item to make a full set of armor. If we need 24 marine fabric, that means we need 8 lots of this recipe here, which means 8 charcoal filters and 24 leafy string. The leafy string, of course, super easy. As we saw before, we can just do this, and if I'm not mistaken, the 27 there should be more than enough. Down here, we're actually getting the paper in quite quickly, and so that is going to get us more charcoal filters. We can take that and make our first batches here. In fact, that's 6 out of the 8 batches that we need already, and so I think, chat, that we're already fairly close on getting most of what we need here. We just need the chest plate, and we're going to be good to go. So that is number 3. We're going to need, I think, 4 more paper after this. Like, we're going to get our 4th paper here. We then need 4 more after that to make all this work, but we are basically already at the point where we can kind of ignore the fact that the water is toxic and just swim in it inside of our suit just as soon as we get even more leaves from our saplings here. For that, as per usual, we need another shear. I do wish we had access to a higher quality shear because we go through these very quickly. You get like 1.5 trees worth of leaves before the whole thing just gives out, but thankfully, none of it's particularly difficult to get. Let's do this, let's do this, let's do this, and I think that we're good to go. We totally are. Nice. Let's get rid of all of this. Let's do a quick one of these, a standard Minecraft chest plate, and chat, we have done it. We have the full set of diving gear, and now, with my sword at the ready, I'm going to quickly dump all of my stuff here because I don't want to lose it. I'm also going to quickly make a second chest here as well so we can dump even more of our stuff. I'm not planning on going on a big exploration just this second, but I don't want to accidentally die in the water and then lose all my stuff. But I believe that now we should be able to come down here without dying. We totally can. So I do see a couple of structures dotted around the place. I don't see any hostile mobs currently, which I guess is good news. We do still have to worry about our oxygen, but it looks like it goes down very, very slowly with this suit on. And of course, there are ways for us to get oxygen as we go further down. We can create little pockets of air, and that's all going to be well and good. And I think this should be fine. I was a little bit more worried about hostile mobs being out here. I thought they were going to be hostile fish that were going to attack us right away. But for the most part, it seems like there are actually not that many of them around, which is good. And so, chat, what we're going to do is next time we'll come back and we will begin doing a little bit of exploration around the ocean around us to see if we can't find maybe what's in some of the structures, because there are quite a few structures kind of dotted around here that I don't think are all necessarily vanilla Minecraft structures. I think some of these might be somewhat modded in nature. And of course, we'll also look at getting gravel, dirt, sand, clay, and kelp to allow us to progress through this quest line here, and of course, begin unlocking some basic ores like tin and copper, and then of course, moving on through there as well. We've got mods like thermal expansion, we have got the colored caves that we saw earlier, we've got advanced crafting, there's a bunch of different mods in here, even mystical agriculture as well that we have yet to play with. We'll expand out our base yet further, potentially get even more ducks, and eventually, of course, see about defeating this pack, and I'm assuming maybe getting up to the surface. I don't know what the very end game of this pack is, but hopefully it involves kind of getting away from being fully submerged. But that is a problem for future Isaac, because for now, we are out of time for this episode of Submerged.